The 11th century was a difficult period for Buddhism in South and Southeast Asia. The Buddhist stronghold in Afghanistan and northwestern India was already lost to Islamic invaders. Buddhism was heading to complete decline in its birthplace, the Gangetic plains of India. The Andhra region in the south of India, the last stronghold of Theravada Buddhism in India, was lost to Hindu Shaivite Chola Empire, while Sri Lanka was already under their rule. The South East Asian Buddhist nations were also under attack from the Chola and Khmer empires. These two empires from India and Cambodia had established a strong alliance and both practiced the Hindu Shaivite religion. During these difficult times, two great kings stand out, who played a major role in reversing the decline of Buddhism. The first was the King Vijayabahu of Sri Lanka, and another was the King Anawrahta of Myanmar. Eventually, Myanmar became one of the centers of Theravada Buddhism and played a significant role in the development and spread of Buddhism in the world. Let's explore how Buddhism reached Myanmar and how Buddhism continued to thrive here while it was lost in India and Afghanistan. Unlike Sri Lanka, where Buddhism reached from the Magad region in eastern India, or Thailand, where Buddhism reached from Sri Lanka, the Theravada Buddhism of Myanmar can be traced to South India. We can start our journey of Buddhism in Myanmar either from the ancient city of Patliputra or the holy city of Bodh Gaya in eastern India. During the 3rd century BC, the Third Council of Buddhism was held in Patliputra, the capital of Magad Empire. The council was held under the patronage of King Ashoka, and one of the decisions that was taken was to send the monks Uttara and Sona to the Swarnbhumi to spread the Dhamma. They reached Swarnbhumi and established the Dhamma in Southeast Asia. Many scholars from Myanmar believe that the ancient monarchy of Thatan was the Swarnbhumi, while other scholars claim different locations, ranging from Thailand, Cambodia to Indonesia. But one thing is certain, the Swarnbhumi was situated somewhere in Southeast Asia. Myanmar could have received the Dhamma through one of the missions sent by King Ashoka of India. Another story takes us 300 years further back in history to the army township of Uruvela, now known as Bodh Gaya, where Buddha had attained enlightenment. He was spending his 7th week after enlightenment under a Rajyatna tree, sitting in deep meditation. Buddha had his first meal after his enlightenment when the two traveling merchants, Tapassu and Bhallika, offered rice cake and honey to him. These two merchants came from Utkal, part of modern-day Orissa in India. More recent versions of the story give the merchants' origin as Myanmar, which says that after preaching to the two merchants, Buddha rubbed his head and presented them with 8 hairs. The merchants returned to Myanmar, while the hair relics was enshrined by the king in the Shodagun Pagoda in Yangon. As per another belief, Myanmar received Dhamma from Buddha himself during the 4 visits made by Buddha to the region. But the historical records show that Buddha never preached beyond the Gangetic plains of India, and therefore the visits of Buddha to Myanmar are yet to be proved by historical evidences. To understand how Buddhism developed in Myanmar, we first need to understand the 4 dominant ethnic groups who gradually settled in the area. During the 6th century BC, the eastern coast of Myanmar was occupied by the Mon people, apart from the trade colonies of Indian merchants. From the 2nd century BC, the Tibeto-Burman speaking Pew people began to arrive in central Myanmar, in the area around the Prom in the Irrawaddy River Valley. They migrated from the present-day Yunnan province of China. The Burmans of Myanmar, the ethnic group which gives the country her name, was the 3rd group that entered the region during 600 to 800 AD from southern China. The 4th major ethnic group of Myanmar are the Shan people, who migrated from the Yunnan province of China from the 10th century onwards. They inhabited the northern and eastern areas of the country around the borders of China, Laos, Assam and Thailand. At the time of Buddha, the inhabitants of Myanmar practiced animism. There were also several colonies of Indian origin traders which were based around the eastern coast. These trading communities migrated from Bengal and Orissa region of India and practiced Hinduism. Later, These communities were absorbed into the Mon culture. The first historical record of the presence of Buddhism in Myanmar can be traced to the 3rd century inscription in Nagarjunakonda in Andhra Pradesh of India. The inscription mentions the land of Kiratas as one of the countries visited by Buddhist monks to spread the Dhamma in the region. The historians maintain that the Mon people of southern Myanmar were referred to as Kiratas. During the 3rd to 6th centuries, southern India was the guardian of Theravada Buddhism, and it maintained and nurtured close contact with other Buddhist countries in Asia. The southern region of Myanmar was also home to the Pew people. Their capital city, Sri Chhatra, was the largest city in Southeast Asia before the Angkor period. The Pew people followed Theravada Buddhism and converted to the faith of Buddha during the 2nd century. Large remains of monastic settlements built during the 4th century have been found at Begthanu, an ancient city named after Hindu god Vishnu. The construction of monastery and stupa is similar to the Buddhist monasteries of Nagarjunakonda. The city itself came into existence between the 2nd century BC to the 1st century AD and is the oldest urban site discovered in Myanmar. The Pew states also maintained a deep connection with South India, which has been proved by the Pali literature inscribed in the Kadamba script on gold and stone plates discovered in Khinba Mound in the ancient city of Sri Chhatra. This script was used in 5th and 6th centuries in southern India. Pew and Mon kingdoms thrived for the next several centuries and established themselves as important centers of Buddhism. Both of these Buddhist cultures were defeated in the 11th century by the armies of Myanmar, which had become one of the strongest forces in Asia under the leadership of King Anawrahta or Aniruddha. This takes us to one of the most glorious chapters of Buddhism in Myanmar. The Bagan kingdom was founded in 849 AD by Myanmar in the Irrawaddy River Valley. The small kingdom of Upper Myanmar was expanded by King Anawrahta, and he united the region for the first time in history. He also stopped the advance of the Khmer Empire and made Bagan one of the major empires of Southeast Asia. He was the son of Bagan king Kunso, who was overthrown by his 2 stepbrothers and forced to lead the life of a monk in a monastery. Anawrahta raised a rebellion when one of his stepbrothers married his mother and started addressing him as brother son, which offended and enraged him. He killed his stepbrother near Mount Popa. Mount Popa is also the center of Nat worship. Nats are godlike spirits who were humans but met violent deaths. Anawrahta was a follower of Ari Buddhism, which is a type of Tantric Buddhism that arrived in Myanmar from the Pal Kingdom of Bengal or from Tibet. Ari Buddhism combined the elements of Buddhism, Nat worship, and Hinduism. King Anawrahta recognized and formalized the official list of 37 Nats. He was converted to Theravada Buddhism by a Mon monk, Shin Arahan. He gave the king the teaching of Appamad or mindfulness and gave him the same doctrine that the monk Nigrodha had given to Emperor Ashoka of India when he converted to Buddhism. Shin Arahan had introduced the Theravada to the Myanmar people, but Anawrahta felt that to establish the Dhamma in Bagan, he needed the Buddhist canon and holy relics of Buddha. He requested for the scriptures and relics from different neighboring Buddhist countries, but he was refused by all of them. He requested Manuha, the Mon king of Thatan, for scriptures, but when he also refused, Anawrahta attacked Thatan in 1057 AD and captured the city after 3 months' siege. He brought the Buddhist canons by force along with King Manuha, his family, and 30,000 monks and artisans. These monks and artisans played an important role in establishing Bagan as the center of Buddhist learning and architecture. He took the relics from Sri Chhatra after capturing the Pew kingdom. The campaign against Thatan also helped him to add rich Indian colonies to his empire, besides stopping the advance of the Khmer Empire, a Hindu state. He was able to provide much needed safe shelter to Theravada Buddhism in Myanmar, which was in retreat in other parts of Southeast Asia from the repeated attacks of the Hindu Khmer Empire and the Chola Empire of South India. He also provided aid and supplies to King Vijayabahu I of Sri Lanka to fight the Chola kings who had invaded the island. He sent monks to Sri Lanka to re-establish the ordination of monks at the request of King Vijayabahu once the Sri Lankan king was able to defeat the Cholas. Anawrahta was succeeded by his son Kyansita, who was another great king that Myanmar has seen. With the rise of wealth of the kingdom led by growing agriculture and trade, he started the large-scale construction of temples and monasteries, for which Bagan is most famous today. This included the famed Ananda temple. He also sent a team to Bodh Gaya to repair the Mahabodhi temple, which was damaged during the Turk attacks. Kyansita also introduced a new style of Buddhist architecture. The traditional stupa found in South Asia is a solid mound in which the relics are enshrined. The stupas are generally surrounded by circumambulatory paths and beautifully carved railings. As the stupas are solid and one cannot enter inside them, the area of worship is situated around the stupas. In the new style of architecture, the stupas are not solid mounds and could be entered inside. Instead of railings, the shrine was surrounded by halls with beautifully carved stone reliefs depicting scenes from the life of Buddha. He also tried to eliminate the influence of Tantric Buddhism introduced from Bengal and instead promoted the ancient Theravada Buddhism of Sri Lanka. The Bagan Empire ended with the Mongol invasions. After the last king of Bagan, Narathiapate, refused to pay tribute to the Mongol kings of China. The furious Mongol king attacked Myanmar and defeated the Bagan forces fighting under the command of Ananda Pissi. With the defeat of Bagan forces in the Battle of Nasangjang and Toungoo, the king and his court fled to the south of the country. The king finally agreed to give tributes to the Mongol king. King Narathiapate was killed in 1287 by one of his sons while he was returning to his capital Bagan. He was forced by his son to eat poisoned food, and with his death, the Bagan Empire collapsed. The empire was divided among the three Shan brothers who paid tribute to the Mongols. After the collapse of Bagan, Myanmar went into a period of chaos. In the south, the Mon kingdom re-emerged in 1287. During the 15th century, Mon king Dhammajedi of Pegu unified the Sangha in the kingdom and purified the order of the monks. Buddhism was getting strengthened in the Mon regions, but the beginning of the 16th century proved to be one of the worst periods for Buddhism in Upper Myanmar, which was ruled by the Shan kings. Thohanboa, the Shan king of Awa, who ruled from 1527 to 1542, killed thousands of monks, looted treasures from Buddhist temples, and burned the scriptures. He was hated with the same intensity by his Myanmar and Shan subjects. He was defeated by the general Baing Nong of the Toungoo Empire and was assassinated by his chief minister after his defeat. This takes us to another great period of Buddhism of the Toungoo dynasty, which was marked by the cruel but effective rule of the great king Baing Nong. The Toungoo dynasty ruled Myanmar from the mid-16th century to 1752. The dynasty was successful in uniting the areas under the previous Bagan Empire and added the Shan and Mon kingdoms in addition to the kingdom of Manipur. King Baing Nong also defeated and captured the kingdom of Lanna and the great kingdom of Ayutthaya of Thailand. He established the largest empire in the history of Southeast Asia, but the empire fell within 18 years of his death. Besides his military wins and cruel rule, he is also known for promotion of Buddhism. He built temples and monasteries all across the conquered land. He also built the Mahasedi Pagoda of Pegu. The chaotic period after the collapse of Toungoo dynasty ended with the emergence of the Konbaung dynasty, founded by the Myanmar king Alangpaya. The dynasty ruled Myanmar for over 100 years, from 1752 to 1886. This was the second largest empire in the history of Myanmar. King Alangpaya defeated the Mon kingdom as well as the kingdom of Manipur and the Shan states. He also defeated the kingdom of Lanna in present-day Thailand. However, the later rulers of the dynasty were not able to protect Myanmar from the Western invaders. In 1826, The British captured Myanmar's coastal areas as the result of the First Anglo-Burmese War. The Second Anglo-Burmese War, fought in the mid-19th century, resulted in the loss of Pegu, which the British renamed as the Lower Burma. Meanwhile, Upper Myanmar witnessed a period of peace, and some of the important Buddhist literature was written at this time, including the Sasnavansha. Buddhism was going through challenging times in the Lower Burma under British rule. Several Christian missions were propagating the religion of victors in the newly won lands. Christianity was fast gaining influence. Many monks fled to Upper Myanmar in search of safer grounds. But King Mindon convinced the monks to return to their native lands and protect the Dhamma and save people in the colonized land. King Mindon died in 1877, and his son Thibaw became the king. He proved to be a weak king and lacked the intelligence of his father. His rule ended when the Burmese army was defeated on 29 November 1885 during the Third Anglo-Burmese War. The king had to surrender and was forced to leave the palace on a bullock cart, along with his family, in the presence of a large crowd of his subjects. He was exiled to Ratnagiri, a small coastal town in western India, where he spent his next 24 years in a two-story brick building along with his wife and two daughters. He died in 1916 and was buried in Ratnagiri. This ended the long chain of monarchy in Myanmar, which started with the ancient Mon and Pyu kingdoms. It also had a great impact on Sangha, which lost royal support and protection. Gradually, the people of Myanmar realized that Buddhism was on decline during the colonial rule. The response to this growing feeling among the Buddhists was a reform movement, which included the large-scale publication of Buddhist scriptures, promotion of Buddhist education, and the establishment of schools. In absence of state support, the lay people from every walk of life took it upon themselves to preserve the Dhamma. Hundreds of lay Buddhist organizations were established. There was large-scale promotion of Abhidhamma and the practice of meditation among lay people. The Vipassana meditation started reaching common masses even outside of Myanmar from the country. One of the prominent figures who were instrumental in the promotion of Vipassana meditation was Lady Sayadaw. Several monks played an active role in the freedom movement, although a majority stayed away from political movements because it was against the Vinaya rules. The country finally freed herself from the British rule in 1948. In 1961, the Union Parliament passed the Act of the Third Amendment of the Constitution, which made Buddhism the state religion. If you found value in this video, please give it a thumbs up. We are constantly coming out with new videos on the life of Buddha and the Buddhist heritage. If the information provided by the video was useful, please subscribe to the channel for similar informative videos on Buddhism. Please share your thoughts on how Buddhism shaped the country of Myanmar in the comment section below.